This is the Undefeated Sports Network. Sport Court, and Court is in session.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into Sport Court. Court is in session right here on the Undefeated Sports Network. I am Tarbill. As always, I am joined by my guy, Angelo Ace Camacho. What's up, Ace? How we doing tonight?
What's up, man? I'm not doing bad, not bad. Just kind of dreading Sunday. Bears, Packers.
Unfortunately, I'm right there in the same boat with you, right? A few weeks ago, I was optimistic, and I was like, hey, this could be a very winnable game for our Chicago Bears. Since then, they've suffered numerous injuries, none more important than Justin Fields, still being questionable and limited at practice today. Although I think the writing on the wall has came to fruition, so to speak, with the signing of Tim Doyle, right?
Yep, you would think that means that he will not be playing on Sunday.
Which is unfortunate because this Bears-Packers game could have been a really good and competitive matchup. Although if it's the Trevor Siemian, Nathan Peterman / Tim Doyle show, I know that this team's not going to be competitive.
You know what sucks is
Siemian didn't even practice today.
Yeah, no, Trevor Siemian. I don't believe is going to play. It would be Nathan Peterman as the
Mr.
starter.
5 interception, Nathan Peterman would be the starter in that case.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend not having him on your fantasy team.
Absolutely. Before we get into that, guys, quick overview for the show here this evening. We're going to talk a little bit of Bears, and then we're going to switch things up and gravitate a little bit towards our Chicago Bulls, what they've been doing. We'll wrap the show up talking some Cubs and Sox, what they've been doing, what moves they haven't been making during the offseason that we would like to see. And we'll go over a variety of Bears topics through the start and end of the show. So with that being said, Ace, I think it's time to get into it. So our first topic for this evening, we've got the injury bug biting here in Chicago. So as you can see here below the screen, Fields, Gordon, Borum, Brisker, all questionable as of this point. Darnell Mooney and Eddie Jackson both placed to IR. Lucas Patrick with the foot, he's done for the season. And then Khalil Herbert also on the IR, although it sounds like he's going to be active before the end of the season, based on what Coach Eberflus has told us thus far.
Yep.
Man, the injury bug has really bitten this team, and it's something when you don't have a lot of depth, right? When you're a young team that is up and coming and trying to see what you have out of players, it can be productive in the aspect that you get the chance to start guys who normally wouldn't be starters on Sunday. But man, you surely are going to miss Darnell Mooney and Eddie Jackson, two leaders on your offense and defense, really. I mean, these guys are leaders in the locker room, leaders of men, and it's unfortunate to see them go down. A lot of times it's next man up mentality. I mean, I think it will be interesting for the offense to see what they do now with Darnell Mooney sidelined. I would like to see Chase Claypool obviously step into that number one.
Well, hold on. So Courtney Cronin tweeted out a little while ago that he is actually listed, or he was limited today in practice as well.
Claypool was limited as well.
Yeah, with a knee.
I had not seen that yet. Yeah.
So it might not.
He's healthy. He would obviously be the number one, quote unquote, number one option going into Sunday. And then I would really like to see Velus Jones and N'Keal Harry on the field this Sunday. I think you will see that just for depth purpose.
Right.
But
Especially if Mooney and Claypool don't play. Like who else?
right,
Equanimous St. Brown, you're gonna rely on him to be the go-to receiver for this game.
for potentially Nathan Peterman and
Right.
or Todd Boyle, which neither one of those guys are going to be world beaters, man. I mean, ultimately, you sign a guy to your practice squad for depth. That's a sign that things are trending in the wrong direction for our quarterback one in Justin Fields. And
Yeah, I don't
whether
think he's going to
Coach
play.
Fields wants to admit it or not, I think that the injury to Fields is a little bit more serious than we initially thought at this point. I don't want to say they're downplaying it, but I think there was no way he was going to be ready Sunday against the Jets. And I think it was obviously you talk about competitive advantage and things like that in the NFL. I don't know that you gain a competitive advantage by telling the New York Jets that they're going to face Trevor Siemian. Like,
yeah, I mean, everybody kind of knew, right? The whole
Exactly.
week leading up until Sunday, everybody knew that Fields wasn't going to play. I think it
was a game time decision, but
right,
the
pain management
writing
is
was
what
on
I'm
the
calling
wall.
it, right? And I just feel like at this point in the season, you have 3 total wins, right? Fields has shown you, at least in my opinion, that he is the quarterback going forward. And people who think like, oh, hey, let's trade him for picks and get a quarterback, like, nah. I think you
want to
ride with
stop you
Fields.
there. I really hate to beat the dead horse on this topic, but to elaborate on what you've said, the amount of negativity and hate that's still being drawn towards Justin Fields is atrocious at this point in the season.
Yes.
And us as Bears fans have to do better, man. I mean, we've had, 20 plus years of mediocre quarterback play in Chicago. Now you finally got a guy who is the solidified number one, who's going to be the franchise future for the next 10 plus years if he stays healthy. Obviously, that's a big if with the load management they've given him running the ball. But overall, I think you've surely seen enough to know that Justin Fields is your quarterback moving forward. Sure, the passing yards are not tremendous yet. You've got the old timers who are always going to say that until they see him throw for 300 yards per game consistently, he's not their quarterback one. I said it last week and then on the pregame show on Sunday. I don't care how many yards Justin Fields throws for as long as he is efficient in his passing, which is what we saw over the past 6 weeks that he played.
We've talked about this a lot. Basically, if the Bears were to pull out those wins, right, where he was only passing for, 150 yards, running for 100 yards, if the Bears would have pulled those victories out, nobody would say anything about the passing yards, right?
The narrative would be completely changed. Us as Chicago Bears fans have to have something to complain about.
Exactly. And forgetting the fact that, like, 3 of those games, there were 2 that were you could have had a shot to win, but a guy on a kick return, punt return, fumbled the ball. And then you had some guy who no longer is on the team get a strip fumble when you're marching the ball down the field. Like, it's a lazy narrative, in my opinion, to think that, because he doesn't throw for 200-300 yards a game, he's not the QB1. And like you said, we've been so starved for quarterback play as Chicago Bears fans, and for some reason, we refuse to just accept the fact that this guy is going to be the guy. And I have nothing wrong with that.
What kills me the most is it's like, in my lifetime, in my almost 30 years on this planet, the best quarterback I've seen play for the Chicago Bears was Jay Cutler.
Right.
That's not saying much. Like, Jay Cutler is our all-time leading passer for the Bears, and he was not a world beater by any means. So, you look at this and you've got a guy like Justin Fields who is doing everything he can week in and week out, laying his heart, blood, and tears, so to speak, out there on the line for this organization, rushing the ball even when he's not feeling 100% because he wants to get that next conversion, wants to get the win. And us as fans, we're still questioning, saying, we don't know if this guy's the guy. We haven't seen enough. As you said, it's a lazy narrative. Get it out of here. I'm done with that. Mm-hmm. I truly believe that Justin Fields is the quarterback of the future for the Chicago Bears. We don't need to go get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. I heard a guy on 670 The Score yesterday afternoon said, well, why don't they go draft CJ Stroud and then they have two really good quarterbacks? And I'm like, no, that's
What team
that's not how
ever in the
NFL
history
works.
of the NFL did that, right? Two good quarterbacks and they just played both quarterbacks. That's the stupidest thing I've heard.
We got a comment here in the chat from Michael. Bears fans are scared to have faith in a quarterback, but once he has healthy guys around him, I think it will turn around. I couldn't agree more. I think that's what we need to see as Bears fans. We need to get to next season where we see consistent receiver play and a more offensive line. We got a comment here from Facebook user Bryce Young for
Go to
trade
YouTube,
bait.
Facebook user.
Yes, Facebook user, if you go to StreamYard.com/Facebook and allow StreamYard to see your name, that will allow us to post your comment so we know who you are, or jump over to our YouTube channel. But to your point, Facebook user, Bryce Young, trade bait, I don't like it. I'm an Alabama fan. Roll Tide, 100%. I think that we are set at quarterback with Justin Fields. I don't see a need to move on from him and go to someone else. He's definitely shown me enough. And Ace, I know you agree on this.
Yes.
Not to go back to that topic, but it's something that I really feel passionate about because us as Bears fans we're not content no matter what happens. At the end of the day, we finally.
And Michael's
get the
comment
guy.
was right? Like we've been so scarred by quarterback play. People had such high hopes from, when Mitch was drafted. I didn't feel this way about Trubisky at all when the Bears, even when he was first drafted. I thought, wow, that's kind of a reach to trade up for a guy with the limited amount of starts in college that he had for the school that he had played for.
Right.
And obviously, hindsight 2020, it was the wrong decision. You're talking about a quarterback in Justin Fields who played for one of the top, if not the top, college programs in the country, right? And he was successful at that high level, right? He played through injuries. He showed you the grit that he has. He showed you what he can bring to the table. And the crazy thing is all these people talking about, oh, well, all he's doing is running, this and that. He's not a pocket passing quarterback. He doesn't have an arm. Go back and watch his film from Ohio State. Like, the dude was throwing the ball everywhere. So, again, with a lazy narrative.
Of that, sorry to interrupt, but part of that is in college, the wide open receivers, right? Separation in the NFL is different from separation in college. Oh, Facebook user is our guys from the Chicago Clubhouse Network.
What's up, fellas?
What's up, fellas? I'm not saying to play him at all. We're good at it, but we can pull a pump fake like John Lynch and pretend we want Bryce. Hey,
I mean, that's not.
I could be with that. That's not a bad idea. Just to bait everybody else into thinking that we want to go after him and then pull out at the last minute or trade.
I kind of wanted to hold off on the draft talk specifically because there's still 6 games left in the season, right? But I think for the bye week, next Sunday, not this coming up Sunday, but next Sunday, I think for Out of Hibernation, we're going to have a couple guests on. We're going to talk a little bit about potential moves the Bears could make if they land in the top 3 and that kind of stuff. So we definitely
will at this point, right?
Ultimately, I mean, you would think
right now. So unless
if they don't win Sunday, which without Fields, I see absolutely no way possible that they win that game.
Agreed.
I don't think they win a single game the rest of the season. Unless they beat the Vikings because the Vikings are sitting people, but that'd be the only way.
So let me ask you this, excuse me, before we move forward. Do you think if Justin Fields is not healthy for Sunday, the Bears brass sits down and says, okay, we've seen enough. We're going to put you on the bench for the rest of the year. We're just going to ride this thing out and tank for whoever we get with the number 2 pick. Obviously there's the edge rusher from Alabama and then Jalen Carter, all those guys. I mean, obviously the Bears don't need a quarterback.
Right.
So if they decide to go a different direction and go defensive or offensive line in the first round, which they should, I think they have the ability to trade back and gain some picks, which kind of leads us into our next topic. Poll's plan. Are the plans coming together? The Bears currently holding the 2nd overall 2023 draft pick. As stated, we don't think there's a reason for the Bears to go after a quarterback.
No way.
Again, we got Clubhouse Network chiming in saying they should let him rest. We ain't about to do shit.
So you had brought that
Honestly,
up, and I was going to talk a little bit about it. I think if Fields is genuinely not healthy enough to where if he was to take a more serious hit, he would get hurt further, I think you shut him down for the season. The guy has nothing left to prove to me. The offensive line is awful. What else is he really going to learn behind that offensive line without his number one wide receiver?
Not
And
much.
it's, to me, it's a little dangerous. You're playing with fire, right? You got a guy who's going to get bad habits playing behind that offensive line. The only reason I would see if he's not, or if they keep playing him, is strictly to try to tweak the offense a little bit. I would like to see, and I know it's difficult because of the offensive line, but I would love to see them be a little more aggressive through the air. Tell Justin, hey, because he definitely hesitates when it comes to those tight window throws, right? Because I think he's worried about it getting intercepted. But at this point in the season, you got 3 wins, you got nothing to lose. It's better for him to develop in regards of, okay, I'm going to throw this pass. Oh, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? Let me figure out why it didn't work. But at least I had the confidence to make that throw. So then he carries that confidence into next season.
And I think to elaborate on that a little further, the one thing that Justin Fields doesn't have down 100% thus far is his decision making, just because he's a competitor. He wants to make the best impression possible on the fans. And ultimately, at the end of the day, when you throw a ball into that tight window, if you drop it in the basket, you look like a rock star. But if you throw a pick, then
ESPN 1000's blowing up with, I'm calling first time, long time. This Justin Fields guy, 3 interceptions. What are we doing? Get him out of here. Let's get a guy who's a pocket passer. Then you get all those stupid calls, and it's
ultimately, to elaborate on the Chicago Clubhouse Network's comment there a little bit, I think, as you said, if Fields is not 100% or you risk further injury, the main thing is we don't want to ruin Justin Fields going into next season.
Right.
So we don't
the
want
last thing we need is for him to get hurt to a point where he loses the whole offseason.
He's got to have, something else happens to the shoulder. He's got to get shoulder surgery, or, God forbid, some other sort of injury happens to him. It's not worth it, right? As you said, we've seen enough out of our quarterback, and moving forward, we are confident that he's the guy. So therefore, if there's any risk to a season ending or a potential little bit longer lingering injury, don't do it. The risk does not outweigh the reward. We're not going anywhere in this season. So
right now, if you were telling me, okay, Packers are coming to town, both teams are at 9 wins, it's for a playoff spot, then I think you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons.
Right.
You play through some pain, but the Packers have 4 wins, the Bears have 3 wins. Like this is literally the least excited for a Bears Packer game I've ever been, and I've watched some real shit Bears teams play against some really stellar Packer teams, and I've still had more excitement than this.
I will say the one thing that I was excited for on Monday, at least, was the potential that Aaron Rodgers wouldn't play. But then he went on Pat McAfee yesterday and said, they looked at the thumb, I'm good, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to play. And then Matt LaFleur confirmed today in their press conference that he's going to play also. So Aaron Rodgers against Trevor Siemian or Nathan Peterman or Doyle, whatever his name is, it's not going to be a good matchup at the end of the day. Aaron Rodgers has the kryptonite for the Chicago Bears, man. He has it in his entire career. He's managed to upset the Bears somehow and win. And honestly, if they lose to this Bears team, they're out of the playoffs mathematically. I mean, they're almost out now. But
this Bears defense,
if they were to somehow lose to this Bears team,
they made Mike White look like fucking Johnny Unitas.
Packers suck.
So here's the one thing I will say about Mike White real quick. Looking back at last week's game, Mike White had a couple really solid rookie performances, and then he had 2 games where he struggled really bad. And that was his entire body of work last season. I don't think Mike White's a starting NFL quarterback in this league. However, at this point, he's performed better than Zach Wilson. So who's going to be the starter Sunday for the Jets? Has that been announced, Ace?
No, I don't think so. I think what I heard was that they're going to just run with Mike White until they feel that Zach Wilson has basically learned his lesson. He's kind of in timeout right now. Like, I have an 8-year-old, and when he acts up, I put him in timeout. You know, hey, can't play the PlayStation or this or that. Like, that's kind of what they did with this stuck-up kid.
Right. No, it's one of those situations where it's like, okay, I understand that you have a competent backup, and if Mike White doesn't work out, you have Joe Flacco to go to, right?
I kind of wish this dude would actually work out.
I don't know why
Barstool has a dope shirt that says "Chucking bombs and smashing moms." Like, that's an awesome shirt.
That it is. I almost bought one when they released that, but I'm like, I can't wear this to work, and
no, definitely not.
6 days a week most of the time. So at that point, it was kind of not favorable for me. But moving forward, talking the Bears here, currently we hold the second overall 2023 draft pick. I think we kind of already answered this, Ace, but what do you think the Bears do with their draft positioning in the first round?
So looking at it from a long-term perspective, you're in a situation right now that you hope to never be in again, right? You have your quarterback, and you're still going to probably be picking in the top 3. Usually, if you're picking top 3, you don't have your quarterback, or there was a significant injury that caused that quarterback not to play, right? Exactly. The Bears are in a spot where they're going to have this opportunity, a top 3 pick. Yeah, you could get a hell of a defensive player or a great offensive lineman at one of those spots. But I think there's so many holes on this team that you really look at, okay, what's the best offer that we can get to move back in the draft, to get more capital, get more picks.
Right.
And if you can fleece a team like Detroit, who has 2 first-round picks next season, hey, we'll let you jump up to 2 or 3. You give us both those first-round picks. Boom. Then, yeah, they might not be the caliber of a top 3 player, but you're still getting guys that are going to be able to come in and be impact players. And regardless of what anybody says about Ryan Poles, his draft class, for the most part, has been productive. We got to remember that these guys are rookies, right? So you're looking at Brisker and Gordon, and yeah, they struggle at times, but there's also times where they've played really well.
Right. Curve your expectations a little bit here. Right. They are still rookies.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, I think you bring up a really fair point there, Ace. Honestly, looking at the picks that Poles has made, as you said, Brisker and Gordon are the ones that he's going to live or die by. And they've played solid for the most part, above average for rookies, I would say, especially in the defensive secondary. That's a hard position to just step in at an NFL caliber and play consistently. And sure, they get burned a little bit. They have rookie mistakes, but
that
overall, the body of work
mistakes, right?
The entire body of work is better than the few mistakes here and there that they make.
Right. We all knew what this season was going to be, right? I've had people text me like, "Oh, it's been a disappointing year for the Bears." Not really. Like if we took our meatheadedness out of it before the season started, when we did our show, we were all like, "Oh yeah, it's possible the Bears could have 10." Realistically, none of us believed that they were going to have 10 wins. You know what I mean? Like, we knew that this was going to be a season where, as long as Justin Fields was able to perform at the level that he's performed the last month and a half, that we were going to be satisfied with this season. It didn't start off that great, right? It started off rocky for like the first 5-6 weeks. But then, they had that mini bye after they played the Commanders. They changed up the offense. They worked towards field strength. And now you see the potential of what he can be and what he will be going into next season. I mean, there were guys comparing him to, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but there's guys comparing him to, he runs like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and all these great runners. And that's exciting, thinking about next season.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's okay to say that he runs like Lamar Jackson at this point. If Fields had stayed healthy, he was on pace to break Lamar Jackson's single season rushing record. So I think it's okay to start making comparisons like that. He's elite with his legs, man. I mean, he broke Michael Vick's single game rushing record,
Right.
something that Lamar Jackson even has not done in the regular season. However, I think Lamar holds the record in the playoff
And that's not his strength.
playoff game. Right.
Like when he was coming out of school into the draft, that wasn't what people were talking about.
No, it was his deep ball accuracy, number
Right.
one. Which
So now you put that extra element into his game. Once they put an offensive line around him, once they get a defense that can actually hold opponents under 30 points, like there's games that this Bears team's lost putting up 31 points on the board that we never thought we would see.
right.
And they're still losing that game 34-31. You know what I mean?
And
with
and
an
when
average
was the last
defense,
time the Bears averaged 25 plus points consistently in a game?
probably probably Cutler. It was probably that first year of Trestman when Cutler was, I think the Bears were like the number 2 scoring offense in the NFL that year.
Yeah, I remember that was the year that we played the Packers in the NFC Championship, right?
Yep.
And
Cutler got hurt.
it was like 38-42 ended up being the final score of that game. It was just a
Then
shootout.
Caleb Haney threw interception to, who was it? Raji Davis, maybe?
I believe you are correct. Yes.
Oh, right. And his
That
big
was-
ass was bumbling, fumbling into the end zone.
That was one of the
Oh.
most memorable for a bad reason.
And I think that
Bears
was the go-ahead
Packers
touchdown,
games,
right?
Yes, it was.
And that's what they ended up winning from that interception, I'm pretty sure.
And that was
was
that
the year-
also the year that they had the "We Are Who They Thought We Were" game?
No, that was 6.
Yeah,
Lovey
you're right.
was still. But I think that was the game that was the season where week 16 they sat everybody against the Packers because they were like, oh, well, we're going to the playoffs. We'll sit everybody. The Packers win. They get into the playoffs because the Bears sat everybody. And then
Yes,
they beat the
you're
Bears in the
absolutely
playoffs
correct.
and then won the Super Bowl that year.
That they did.
God, being a Bears fan is
Unfortunate,
tough.
man.
Why do we always go down these fucking roads, man?
We go down this rabbit hole and now we're sad, Bears.
Yeah,
fans.
no,
But
let's get back on the happy page of Justin
yes.
Fields.
Looking forward, guys, we have a lot to like about this Bears team. We have our quarterback for the first time in 20 plus years. They can stop showing those graphics now on ESPN where it's
Hopefully.
the Bears quarterbacks in the last 23 seasons and the Packers, and they have 2 in Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre, and we've had like 27 or 23. It's a ridiculous number.
Yeah, it's outrageous.
So moving
We,
forward, and we haven't. Go ahead.
Before we go to the next team, because we're going to get off of Bears here, we're going to take a small little break real quick, and then we'll be right back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm undefeated. I came to fight for the love of the game. Unstoppable. That's why I'm undefeated. Off the leash, out of the cage, an animal. That's why I'm undefeated. I know I can beat it. Won't give up, 'cause I believe it. Fight for the love of the game. Unstoppable. That's right. I'm undefeated.
All right, and we are right back here on the Undefeated Sports Network. I am Andrew Tarbill, joined by Ace Camacho as always. This is Sport Court, and Court is in session. Before we move on to our next topic, we've got a comment here in the chat from our guy Brent saying now they have to build a team around Fields. Absolutely agree. That's the key pivotal piece to make this team successful next season. Build the offensive lineup, get a defense that can stop a cold again, and we'll be in good shape. But moving forward, man, it's been a while since we've got to talk anything but Chicago Bears.
Right.
And I'm excited to transition here and talk a little bit of Bulls. So are the
It
Bulls
has been a
pulling-
minute, right? Most of these shows, we've been Bears heavy, but the Bears, when football season's going, even when football season's not, they
They
devour the
Chicago
sports world, right? Yep.
Absolutely. So graphic here we've got for you guys this evening are the Bears pulling the bull over your eyes. Clever
Bulls are pulling the
wording
bull
there, Ace.
over our eyes. It's a play on like pulling the wool over our eyes, right?
Yeah, I think they got it. But
Well,
they-
maybe. Sometimes you got to explain these things to some people.
So the Bulls are currently sitting at 9-11. 12th in the Eastern Conference. Rough start for our
Yeah.
Chicago Bulls, man. I mean, ultimately, we had high hopes for this team in the offseason, and then coming into the start of the season, preseason, they look pretty solid. The team comes out. Obviously, we're still missing a key pivotal piece to this offense in Ball being injured still.
Is
And
he that pivotal of a piece though? Like, so
I
this topic, I
believe
wanted
yes.
I wanted to bring this topic up because I had read an article from The Ringer, and the title really, we talked about the Bulls a couple weeks back when we were talking about which Chicago team is, I believe, in the worst situation.
Yes.
Or in the best situation, I think is what it was. Which Chicago team is in the best situation currently? And I had said that I thought the Bulls were in the worst position of any of the Chicago sports teams. And,
And then I said the Blackhawks, and we
right,
agreed.
well, yeah, right, the Blackhawks, but that's a whole nother story.
Right.
But the title of this article came out 3 days ago, says the Bulls are the NBA's most depressing team. And it starts like this. Chicago has backed itself into Jesus Christ, inevitable corner and possibly the worst situation in the entire league. And that's what I was talking about a couple weeks back, is you're looking
Right.
at a team, right, that if this was 2002, this team would be awesome, right? You got a guy like DeMar dropping 38 points in the paint.
Quit hating on the mid-range game. I'm going to stop you right there, Ace. So the mid-range game can still exist in today's NBA.
I'm
And
not
both
down it.
DeMar
I don't
DeRozan-
disagree.
Both DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine are excellent mid-range shooters.
Right, but in today's NBA, look at last night's game, Mavericks and Warriors, right? That game came down to the wire, and it was all because at the end of the game, you had guys taking big three-point shots, making them to
Right.
pull themselves ahead by 2, by 3. And you look at this Bulls team and name one guy that if you were down by 2 and you had 0.4 seconds left, that you'd be like, all right, we're giving him the ball to shoot and he'll make it 35-40% of the time.
Zach LaVine.
Disagree.
Without a doubt, Zach LaVine.
Hold on. I'm going to look up Zach LaVine's statistics right quick.
Pull up the stats. With that being said, man, while you're doing that, I just want to say that I think this Bulls team has the potential to still be great in the season. Obviously, we're only 20 games in. I think when Ball comes back, you will see both the offensive and defensive production step up, because not only is Ball an excellent passer and shooter, he's also a pretty good defender at the point guard. So I think we will see this team step up. We haven't seen the togetherness that we need to see. Io's looked good for the most part, but he's had some rough spots as well. Go ahead, Ace. I know you got that stat in front of you that you want to share here.
All right, so it's a little better than I thought it was going to be. He's averaging 35% from 3, but he's only averaging 3 3-pointers a game. That's what he's averaging. So
okay,
for a guy that's making max money like him, he shouldn't be averaging.
And here you want to go back to the max contract, which
bro, he's averaging 20 points a
understand.
game. You're going to put a
do
guy on a
understand.
max deal and average 20 points a game. You can get a scrub off their bench to average 20 points a game. Vucevic could, if you ran the offense through him, could get 20 points a game.
So let me ask you this. How does this team look different if Zach LaVine's not a member of this team? And the reason I say that is because had they not gave Zach LaVine the max deal, someone else would have, and he would not be a Chicago Bull right now.
Right, 100%. I agree 100% with that. I'm not saying... All right, so the Bulls were kind of in a tough spot, right? They believed... It's funny that the same owner is the same owner of the White Sox, right? And he's very... He believes heavy, like, oh, we were just injured, so we'll be better next year. It was the same philosophy for this Bulls team, right? Well, we lost Ball, and Levine was playing injured most of the down the stretch for the last little bit of the
Caruso
season.
was hurt late.
Right,
In the
Caruso
season.
got
Patrick
hurt a lot.
Williams.
Oh yeah, Patrick Williams, the big. He's gonna develop into this great, talent. But now you put yourself in a situation where you have a guy like Zach LaVine, who the first game of the season was on load management after you just paid this man a max
First
contract.
game of the season. Yes,
Right. That's not when you
I
should
hate
do load management.
I seriously hate load management. I think it's a silly philosophy, right? There was no
I think
load
that's what's
management.
leading to most of these injuries, if I'm being 100% honest.
There was no load management when Scotty and Jordan were playing. No load management whatsoever. Those
and that
guys
might make
played
us seem like
in the game.
old, or yeah, back in my day. But like for real, when there was no load management back then.
And guys did not get injured as often.
Right.
And when they did, it was they got injured, they did the surgery, whatever, did the rehab, and came back. Now guys literally sit out for the silliest things. Like, I got poked in the eye 3 days ago, so I'm going to sit out. Or, that's a bad example, but I got pushed down. Whatever the case is, it's load management to me is just really depriving the fans of what they pay to see, right?
Mhm.
If I go to a Chicago Bulls game and because of load management, Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan are sitting on the sideline, or even just one or the other, I'm going to be frustrated as a fan because I paid to come out and see the talent that this team has. And, now you're telling me they're on the bench for load management? Get out of here. I dislike load management as much as I do as the way the NBA has evolved to rely so heavily on the three-point shot. I understand that it's a different game now than it was in the 90s, early 2000s. And don't get me wrong, everyone likes seeing a deep three-pointer from Steph Curry or Damian Lillard, whoever it is that's out there, honestly. But Trae Young, all these guys that are Luka Doncic, all these guys that are lockdown shooters from the three-point position, people like to see that. I get it, but at the same time, defense has lacked significantly in this league because of the evolution of the three-point shot, for right or wrong. And now we have some of the highest scoring matchups, which sure, it's exciting to see offensive scoring, but I want to see you be able to stop a guy in the paint too. And it just seems like a lot of teams are not able to do that. The Bulls included seem to just get run over on defense, especially this season. They have not done a good job defensively. And you think that Patrick Williams would be developed enough at this point that he'd be able to stop, really put his foot down and stop guys from coming in the lane, be that two-way player that we want him to be, but ultimately we haven't seen it thus far on a consistent level. And Vooch isn't a great defender. He's average. But my biggest issue with Vucevic, let me ask you this. I saw an interesting perspective earlier in the week with some stats of none other than Wendell Carter Jr. And they were questioning, honestly, who won the trade between the Bulls and Orlando at that point.
Yeah.
Or at this point, looking forward just over a season since the trade happened. And Wendell Carter Jr. has developed into a really solid two-way player. He's not a world beater. He's not a max contract guy, but neither is Nikola Vucevic at the end of the game. End of the day.
I got both of their stats right here. Hold on. Ready?
Yep. Go ahead.
All right. So Vooch is averaging right now 15.6 points a game. Wendell is averaging 16 points a game.
Basically even.
Right. And 3-point percentage it's 34% for both. So, I mean, you're looking at a guy, the reason you picked Vucevic up in that trade was in hopes of having a big man that could stretch the floor, hit the three on the pick and roll, right? Well, he doesn't hit that at a consistent enough clip, especially when the Bulls need him to. And that's a big problem as well.
That's the problem, right? Ultimately with Vooch, when it's down to clutch time is when he struggles the most. So,
and I understand you're running your offense through Levine, through DeRozan, So like I understand, his points are going to taper off. They're not going to look like what they
To
looked
an-
like when he was in
to
Orlando.
an extent, right?
Right, but you traded a guy that right now is 23 years old, averaging basically the same statistics of a guy that's 32 years old.
That's Wendell Carter Jr. is only 23.
Yeah.
I did not realize he was still that young, but
Yeah.
I mean, that further kind of solidifies the question as to I don't want to say the Bulls get robbed in that trade, but
I don't think they were patient enough.
Was the trade made to look more favorable than it was? And ultimately,
I think it was.
I think the answer
what
is
happened was, as an organization, they found themselves in a spot where they weren't going anywhere, right? They had guys that were old. You had Dwayne Wade on this team at one point, Rajon Rondo. You trade Jimmy Butler. You get rid of all these guys. You get like Lauri Markkanen, Wendell Carter Jr. Who the hell else is on that team back then? Denzel Valentine, I think, was one of the picks.
Yep.
Right. And you ship out two of the guys in Carter, who was really young, and Markkanen, who was fairly young as well. And now both those guys are on teams and doing well for those teams. I mean, Markkanen made it a point to go out there and almost drop 40 points on this Bulls team.
Right. Which I did like seeing that for Lauri Markkanen in just the basketball fan aspect, because I'm happy to see him progress. I thought the Bulls gave up a little bit too early on Markkanen, in my opinion. But as Chicago teams tend to do, it's instant gratification. It's not what will you do for me, it's what can you do for me now.
So let me ask you this question. The Bulls traded their first round pick next year. It's a top 4 protected to the Orlando Magic. So as long as they're in the top 4, I believe they get to keep that pick, right?
That's correct.
Right. So as of right now, finishing with one of the 3 worst records in the league, they would have a 52% chance of keeping that pick in the during the lottery process.
Right.
Right now, where they're standing.
Can I just take a second to say that I absolutely despise the draft lottery process?
I do too. It's stupid.
And
it's so
I
dumb.
get it. I get it. You're trying to prevent teams from tanking, but like
I think it just makes more teams give up
want
sooner
to
in the
tank.
season. Right.
It's counterintuitive. But anyways, continue your.
So they have a 52% chance, if they finish with one of the 3rd worst records, to keep that pick. Whereas right now they're projected only a 40% chance of making the playoffs.
Okay.
So they have a better chance of tanking this season and keeping that first round pick in a draft that's supposed to be a pretty good draft for those top 3 picks.
That kid from Duke's supposed to be a world beater, right?
Right. And you're looking at a team right now that's got a guy in DeMar DeRozan that's old. Vucevic is old. Zach LaVine's got busted knees.
Not that old. He's like 32. I mean
32 in the NBA.
LeBron James is like 47, and he's still.
But don't put DeMar and LeBron on the same pedestal right here. I hate LeBron James, but the dude is definitely right. Right. So I don't know. I just think that this Bulls team, and people are, you're not a real fan. You want to see them lose. No, I want to see them win, and I don't think that this team, as currently constructed, even if Lonzo Ball comes back, and that's a big if, because there is no signs that are saying, oh yeah, he'll be back by this time after Christmas or after the first of the year. Nah, there's nothing
it's
coming
very
out.
Uncertain at this point.
Right. So you're looking at a team that constructed currently right now, they're not beating the Bucks in a series. They're not beating the 76ers. No. Yeah, they beat the Bucks one time in 5
in regular season games against teams that should be beatable.
Right. You lost to the Thunder. Yeah, you beat the Bucks for the first time in 5 years in Milwaukee. Like, yeah, that's cool.
That was the first time in 5 years?
Yeah. Like, you can't. Wow. It doesn't. This team isn't built to win, even though they're supposed to be a win now team.
I would agree there. I just don't think there's enough pieces, enough depth, and more importantly, enough consistency out of this team to win continuously. So
100%.
Before we move on I just have to say one thing. What do you think the Bulls' record is at the end of this season? Do they have a winning record?
I don't think they make the playoffs.
Okay, that was going to be my next question. So,
Sorry. Yeah, no. So I
do
think they have a
winning
losing record. I think they have a
And-
losing record and they don't make the playoffs. And then you're sitting in a situation where, like I just said, what do you do? Because if you don't get one of the three worst records, you're just in the same exact spot you were in with Jimmy Butler
Right.
on this team.
So here's, I guess, the follow-up to that. And I agree with you that I think the Bulls will miss the playoffs this season. I think their record's pretty close to 500 by the end of the season, but it's not good enough to be meaningful. And they don't have the depth pieces to go down the stretch with competitive teams like, although we have a comment here from Brandon Hiller, beat the Celtics twice. This is true. The Celtics are a team that obviously were very competitive last year and are very competitive this year. Very good squad. Do they make the play-in? I think that depends on Ball. When Ball comes back, how healthy he is and how competitive they are down the stretch is going to be strictly based off of the longevity of Ball and I'm trying to think of another word so I don't sound like Matt Nagy, but the collaboration that he has with his teammates.
All right, so
on the
I'm going to
stretch.
go through the Eastern Conference real quick before we get on to baseball.
Go
You
ahead.
tell me if the Bulls are better than any of these teams, okay?
Okay.
The Celtics. And I'm talking about
No.
not regular season. Let's talk about playoff basketball if Ball doesn't come back, okay?
Okay.
Celtics,
No.
Bucks,
No.
Cavaliers,
Maybe.
no shot. No
I'm
shot.
just kidding.
The
No.
Pacers, maybe, because the
Possibly.
Pacers were supposed to be awful this year, but they got 12 wins already. The Raptors, maybe.
Maybe.
The 76ers, no shot. The Hawks, no shot. The Wizards, they're playing really good ball too.
But maybe.
Maybe. The Nets, I would say they definitely have the potential to be better than the Nets. Nets look like trash right now. The Knicks,
Well, so let me go back to that one.
mhm.
I would say at this current state, yes, they're a better team, more well-rounded team than the Brooklyn Nets. However, what's going on with Kyrie Irving? Is he back? Is he coming back?
I think he's back. He's playing in Skechers and he's killing it.
Skechers and Hanes socks.
Yeah. Him and Jordan are hanging out on the Haynes train.
Go ahead. Let's.
But the Knicks are always hard. They
Possibly.
play hard. The Heat, no shot. I know the
Is
Heat are
Dirk
just
still on the Knicks.
yes.
Wanted him to bring our
Bring
man
him home,
D-Rose
baby. Bring him home.
I think
but-
it's a lost cause at this point.
I think so too. I think maybe he might end his career, but I don't think at the time at the point when they bring him back, I don't think it's going to be what everybody was hoping for. I do think that
Agreed.
if you're this Bulls team, and people are going to hate me for saying this,
I already hate you for your Bulls opinions. I'm
your
just-
best bargaining chip right now to do anything with to try and make this team better is Zach LaVine. Period.
So I don't hate you for that. I actually agree. I think Zach LaVine has been very consistent over the past 3 seasons, but he's not playing at that level thus far this season. And again, this is a guy who you gave a max contract, right?
Right.
So the only caveat there is that he's going to have to improve his play. So if you move on from him, you get a team that's willing to absorb that max contract money.
Right. And I think the kind of team that you're looking for is going to be like a lower playoff contender in the West. You know, like a team that he could go to and be that second star to a star. You know what I mean? Like the Mavericks. I think that is a perfect place to send him. I think a team like
Luka
the Blazers.
and LaVine,
Yeah. I mean, you got
that
Luka
could
who
be
can put up
that could be
40
a
points a
very
game.
tough team.
Yeah. Luka is
and-
better than DeMar, right? So Luka's going to handle the DeMar role while Levine still plays his ball.
So here's my question. Although I don't disagree that Zach's your biggest trade asset at this point, if you're trying to trade,
Mhm.
should the Bulls have moved on from DeMar DeRozan at the end of last year? I only ask this because DeMar DeRozan had the best season statistically of his playing career last year. Odds are his value is never going to be higher than it was at the end of last season. Did the Bulls mess up here? Should they have pulled the trigger and moved DeMar and tried to get some pieces for this team?
I don't know, man. I think right now DeMar's still valuable, except he's just getting older. Like,
Right.
he's still putting up 26 points a game. You know what I mean? And there's games where
Right.
he'll drop 40 points, but he's 33.
True.
So you're looking at a guy. What do you really, if you're a team that's going to pick up DeMar, you basically are going to be a team
Are you
like we
win
just
now?
talked about, right? Where you're one piece away, like the Suns, right? They can never get over that hump right now. That wouldn't be a bad spot for him to go.
I feel so bad for Chris Paul, man.
I do too, but I do. I think
just wanna
that
say that.
if
I wish he
DeMar,
would've won one.
if DeMar was to go to that's another good point. The Bulls should look to trade him as well. I think if he went to a team like the Suns or, the Nuggets, even, give Jokic an extra guy to play around with. I think that he could be that piece that puts that championship team over the top.
I don't disagree. If you do that, this team looks ugly, and ultimately it's rebuild time again.
Right,
The
but you
hope
might
when
be in that mode
when
next
you
year.
dropped these guys here was that you would be in win now mode, but it has not transpired that way.
Nope.
And unfortunately, as you alluded to previously, Jerry Reinsdorf is when we're healthy, we're going to be competitive guy to a
That's
fault.
it too. They did it with Derrick Rose, right? Oh, well, we'll just hold on
absolutely.
to all these pieces. When Rose is healthy, we're going to be good. And Rose was never able to get healthy.
Right. He had
Put
that
your team
phenomenal
in-
rookie year, and that was
Right. And then you put that Bulls team back years trying to make up for. And don't get me wrong.
We're not in as bad of a situation as we were with Garpax by any means.
No. I agree with
But-
that. But I do think that there's this weird pattern. And, Sylvia on ESPN always talks about it starts at the top. And if you look at the
Yes.
White Sox and you look at the Bulls, they're parallel in the way that the teams are, we have all this potential on these teams. As long as we're healthy, then we'll be good. And it never comes to
It
fruition.
never transpires because they're
Right.
never healthy, and that's
Right.
the problem with both baseball and basketball is that players get injured
Mhm.
on a consistent basis. Really, you look at football injuries, sure, you have one or two on your Chicago Bears that are significant each year. This year, obviously, a little bit more than normal. Till the NFL gets rid of turf, I think that's going to be a trend. But,
Mhm.
going back to the NBA and then baseball, those are long seasons for these guys, and they're bound to get hurt. If you don't have the depth behind them and you don't have, really good bench pieces, especially in basketball, you have to have a solidified bench.
Right.
You see it time and time again. These teams just struggle down the stretch, and it's frustrating as a Chicago sports fan.
So right now it's halftime of the Bulls game. The Bulls are playing the Suns, right?
Yes, sir.
They are losing 64-43.
64-43.
Yes. And this is supposed to be a win now team.
Good
right?
God, that's bad.
Yes. DeMar is the
That's
leading
almost
scorer
changed
with
the channel, Brad.
DeMar is the leading scorer with 11 points. You
That
paid
is
Zach
not-
LaVine a max contract.
To
He
not be
needs-
your leading scorer
Right.
at halftime.
Right. What are we
I-
doing?
I understand what you're saying. All right, Ace, due to our time constraint, I do want to get into
Yeah.
our next topic real quick before we wrap the show up. But it's been fun talking a little Bulls, man. We need to incorporate the Bulls back in more often. Maybe every 3 weeks or so we can talk about how bad they've been since then. Looking
By
at our
far,
last
real
topic,
quick,
go ahead.
I just want to say this is one of my favorite graphics that I've ever done. Is this MLB cold stove one?
It looks very good. I do agree with you there, but so we've got the MLB cold stove. What are the Sox and Cubs doing? Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
With
They're
the
actually getting
exception of
worse.
with the exception of the Clevenger acquisition, I think the Sox have done nothing meaningful. Obviously, they walked away from one of their best players, in my opinion, who went and
Jose?
signed Jose Abreu. Who
I
went
think it
and
was
signed a
time to move
contract.
on from Jose, though. I know that's
disagree.
not
I think he's
Abreu.
a
I did.
foundational piece of that team, and I get it. He's not a young guy. He's not Tim Anderson, right? But what did Tim Anderson do down the stretch? Sure, he was hurt, whatever. I don't.
Yeah, but I
Again,
think
it
this
goes
White
back
Sox
to the
team
same
is in
discussion that we were having on
Right.
basketball, right?
right. I
Ultimately,
think they're in a tough spot too.
The Sox are in a tough spot because for the last 3 seasons we've been hearing, oh, this team when healthy, they're a playoff team. They're just one run away from winning a World Series. And I don't think this team could be any farther from that at this point because they've given a lot of guys big money deals. Similar to the Bulls, man, it sounds like they have something in common.
The
they
owner.
do. The
same
owner.
guy. I know you can't tell
the same
underneath all
guy.
that scruff on that picture down there, but
But
the
yes,
same
Jerry
guy.
Reinsdorf, man, I don't understand the philosophy here. And it goes back, I'm going to take this back to the hiring of Tony La Russa over Ricky Renteria. I did not understand the move to move on from Ricky Renteria to start with. And then you go back to a guy in Tony La Russa who's like 84 years old and has a heart condition. He's not 84, but he's
not far off.
in his late 70s. I mean, he's an older gentleman. He's got heart issues. He couldn't make it through the season. I think that was a cop-out, a way for him to step away without being let go, but that's neither here nor there. He retired. He retired the same way that Chuck Pagano retired at the end of his tenure with the Bears.
Right. Like,
Either
I
you
retire.
retire or we're going to fire you. Like,
Yes.
at the end of the day, that's exactly what happened with with Tony La Russa, and you can't tell me differently. But back to the topic at hand here, this team has done nothing other than the acquisition of Clevenger to make themselves better down the stretch. And you flip the script and go to the other side of town and look at our Chicago Cubs. They're letting Wilson Contreras walk, which I think is a stupid move. Wilson Contreras is one of the most solid all-around catchers in the game. I mean, he doesn't excel at one thing particularly, but he's a very good catcher. He has good relationship with his pitcher. Consistent when he hits the ball. Not a guy that's going to hit for a crazy amount of home runs or anything, but a guy that knows how to get on base and drive runs in. And why are you moving on from a key foundational piece of your team, somebody who's stepped up and been a leader as this team has moved away from the likes of Anthony Rizzo?
I was just going to say that.
Javier Baez. You've moved away from all these guys who were once foundational leadership pieces on your team. Wilson stepped up to the plate and became a leader in the dugout and on the field, and now you're going to move away from him because you don't want to pay him. I think Wilson Contreras was deserving of the contract, of the money that he wanted. I would have thrown whatever amount within reason it took to keep Wilson Contreras in a Cubs uniform. I think the Cubs missed big time on that one, Ace.
I agree 100%. You're looking at a team, right, that supposedly is supposed to be spending big money this offseason to get the Cubs back to the playoffs, right? And you let go the best player on the team that was easily a guy that could have mentored younger guys coming in. You have some, prospects in the pipeline that you can get a little bit excited about.
Right.
And you move on from a catcher. Catchers, I don't care what anybody says, those are one of the more important positions on your team. To have a good catcher
Oh,
is a
absolutely.
great asset. And you're going to move on from a guy like Wilson Contreras, who has been the epitome of what a team player is. And you're just going to be like, yeah, no, thanks. We'll walk. We don't need you.
Yeah, it's frustrating because it's that arrogance, right? Is what kills me the most about it. Is like, oh, we can find someone as good or better for cheaper money, so we're not going to pay you. Well,
Who?
And look at
Exactly.
where you're at right now. I mean, ultimately, the Cubs are a team that in 4 to 5 years, if their prospects all pan out, obviously they're not all going to pan out, but if 65% of the prospects hit and make it to the majors and play at a consistently high level, there's a lot of pitching talent in the pipeline that needs to develop over the next few seasons. I mean, you look at the draft last year and it was like right-handed pitcher, left-handed pitcher, right-handed pitcher. Like, I think the Cubs took like 8 pitchers last season. No cap. That's not over dramatizing.
No, I'm pretty sure you're right.
They took a large amount of pitchers because they knew that's what they needed to address. And that's fine. If half those guys turn out, you'll have a solid bullpen in 5 years. But the problem with baseball is it's such a long game. Like, what I mean by that is you look at these prospects and you get guys that you know are not going to be ready for 5 or 6 years. So in parallel, excuse me, you have to fill your team with sustainable pieces that are already playing at the major league level. And the Cubs said, oh, we're going to go out and be aggressive. We're going to spend all this money. Well, where are you being aggressive? You're not. You're being the opposite of aggressive. You're extremely conservative. And you're going to march this, pardon my French, shit show out there again next season. And us as Cubs fans, man, I'm done. I'm not going to go to Wrigley and pay $100 to watch a ball game where the Cubs lose by 6 runs.
So
I have no desire to do that.
We heard when Theo came in and when Rick, that they were going to build a team that was going to be similar to what the Dodgers are now, right? That's what we were told. Young players coming up in the pipeline, not afraid to spend money, right? All right, let me just throw this number out here for you, right?
Go ahead.
Mookie Betts is on a 12-year, $365 million contract, right? And he was a sign and trade, I believe. They traded for him and then signed him to that deal. Yes, the Cubs right now, their highest paid player is Seiya Suzuki, 5 years, $85 million. That is $300 million difference,
right,
for your top contract. It's the same thing with the White Sox, right?
Near what they're doing.
Right. The Cubs are what? The third highest market in baseball, right? Yankees, Yankees, so. Dodgers, Cubs, right? Those are the 3 highest. Well, the Cubs aren't playing in the big boy pool right now.
No, they're not.
They got the high. Marcus Stroman is the next highest at 3 years, $71 million.
Yeah, you're not throwing big boy money out there like you said you were going to.
The next highest on the Dodgers is Freddie Freeman at 6 years, $162 million.
That was a very good acquisition, getting Freddie Freeman from the Braves. That was very solid of them.
It's the same thing though with the White Sox, right? So the White Sox, the Astros won the World Series, right? Right. They have Jose Altuve, who's on a 7-year, $163 million deal. And the White Sox highest contract is Grandal, 4 years, $73 million. Oh, well, the White Sox are still in Chicago, man. I don't care what anybody says. That's still a market that you need to spend money.
Oh, absolutely.
You've seen this growth in baseball where what you have to do in baseball is you basically suck, right? Get as much prospect as you can. And then once you bring those prospects up, then you spend the money. Like when the Cubs won the World Series, they brought all those guys. They brought Chris Bryant up. They had, who the hell was the shortstop? Addison Russell, Javi Baez, Wilson Contreras. You had all these young players, right? But then you also went out and you spent money on a guy like John Lester, Anthony Rizzo, Jason Hayward. Like, that's what you're supposed to do.
Noel Chapman.
Right. Exactly. Chapman, right? The White Sox have sucked. They've been a sucky team. They're supposed to be
Right.
in the spot now where they're like, okay, hey, we brought our prospects up. Now let's spend that money to get us over the top.
Right.
And they're using to do it.
Like, we don't have to do that.
Right.
Well, before we wrap up here, Ace, I do want to say one last thing about the Cubs. And this is going to be a shocker. It's going to be an unpopular opinion. I do not think Grandpa Rossi is the right manager for the Chicago Cubs.
I don't either.
Like,
They
for
should have
one,
kept Joe Madden.
He's too far removed, or he's not far enough, removed from the game of baseball as a player to solidify him. I mean, he wins the World Series with the Cubs, and a few short years later, he's their manager. I don't understand that. I think that the Cubs should have stuck with Joe Madden. They would have been further along than they are right now.
And maybe Joe Madden, obviously, he went to Los Angeles and it didn't go well.
Right.
But nobody has done well with the talent that's on the Angels for the lack of success that team has had with the talent that it's had. It's kind of criminal, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
I do think that they were real quick to pull the trigger on Joe Madden, right? Okay, you won us the World Series. We'll see you later. Like, in reality, it's shown that Cubs team, the players didn't perform. They barely performed when they won the World Series. If you look at the playoff run up to the World Series, there were games where the bats were just dead.
Absolutely dead. And there was real question going down the stretch if they would be able to solidify. I mean, the Cubs won the World Series arguably because of a rain delay in Game 7. Like, as happy as I am that they did that, and that's one of the greatest moments that I as a sports fan have ever gotten to experience, that game may be lost had we not had the rain delay.
Right.
Like, that's what it came down to because the bats were not hot consistently. And
they were lucky to have the pitching that they had on that team because without that pitching, that never happens. Without Arrieta, without Hendricks playing the way he was playing, John Lester was still playing really well.
Yes.
You're toast.
No, I agree 100%, man. And we could go on and on about the Cubs. I wish we had more time to do so because I really like ranting about their lack of spending money and just the overall lackluster performance that this Cubs team has had. But as time constraints allow, I think it's about time for us to get out of here, Ace. So, guys, we appreciate all of you. As always, we end our show with the Packers Suck logo.
Packers suck!
Courtesy of our guy Ace here. Appreciate each and every one of you for joining us here on Sport Court, right here on the Undefeated Sports Network. We are live each and every Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time for Sport Court, and Court is in session. Be sure to go follow USN on all of our major platforms. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. Follow Ace himself at Sport Court AC on Twitter. You can follow me at Tarbill_1252 on Twitter. We appreciate each and every one of you for joining us. As always, guys, we will be live Sunday morning for the best Bears pregame show on the planet.
It might be you and Turtle on Sunday because I may have tickets to this game. Unfortunately,
we may see you live from the stands on your phone.
Let me just tell you, of all the Bears Packer games that I could have been blessed to just get tickets for,
this one's not.
This is the one that Justin Fields won't play. The defense is awful.
Right.
It's just going to be a shit show.
Absolutely, but we will be back either way, guys. Sunday morning for Out of Hibernation. We will see you then. As always, we appreciate each and every one of you guys. Have a good night, and we'll see you on Sunday morning.
Yeah!